Hey guys, welcome back. So one of you asked me to break down the space stocks, specifically SPCE, RKLB, ASTS. They said SPCX, but just realized that that is not what you think it is yet. That was a different company that's giving up the ticker. But anyway, I'm glad you asked because it's really one of the hottest retail themes right now. Institutions too, but I think they're playing it a little differently, and I'll show you what I'm thinking. So anyway, the big backdrop is that SpaceX IPO anticipation. And whenever investors start thinking about SpaceX coming public, money starts looking for opportunities that are essentially proxies. So that means names like Rocket Lab, like we talked about, ASTS, SPCE, MNTS. MNTS is getting a lot of read. There's also a bunch of others that I'm not going to do, like Redwire. And then there's the ETFs, NASA, UFO, RK gets a lot. So they're getting attention. You can see a lot of activity in those names that I'm pulling up. They're all trending up and to the right. But here's the key point. They're not all the same trade. And so when somebody asked about these tickers, I just wanted to go through them and show you how I'm thinking about them fundamentally, technically and sentiment wise. So I'm going to do a tight breakdown, of the space basket, what I've personally traded, what I've closed, and what I still own for light exposure, and one trade idea I'm considering. So this isn't a video about SpaceX, to be honest. I could do that specific video. Let me know in the comments. But viewers were asking about current names. So here are a few things I've been watching, and I realize I'm missing a bunch, but just leave the tickers in the comments below. So again, this isn't financial advice, just how I'm thinking through the theme. So the big picture, okay. Again, we can look at any of these just as proxies for the moment. It's hot, but it's getting a little bit crowded. Look at this volume increase as we're up. So it's, crowded, but crowded trades can get much more crowded. So that doesn't mean that I'm not still looking at it. Becomes a little less appealing to me in some degrees, but different trading methodologies, this becomes a whole lot more exciting to me. In fact, if you were to zoom out, you could see some of these volume spikes led into further accumulation and then expansion. So it doesn't mean that couldn't happen again, and it really could. But how am I going to play that if I definitely want to play it? I'm not definite on it just because of some of my other allocations. But anyway, since that's what we're talking about today. So once the theme starts moving, because everybody's anticipating the same catalyst, I try to get very clear about what I'm actually trading. Am I trading the SpaceX IPO sympathy? Am I trading infrastructure? Am I trading launch infrastructure? Am I trading satellite communications? These are the questions I'm trying to figure out. Am I trading defense and government space spending? Am I trading low price retail squeeze? I got to be very clear on what it is. So, because they're all different trades. And that's why I don't lump them all together. So let's break it down. So recent trades, I was in Rocket Lab, which was quite good. I was in, and you could see I actually have a alert here if it comes back down to where it broke out for me, because I was in before that. But I've since closed it. I was also in VOYG. If you guys aren't familiar with this doesn't get a lot of love, but Voyager Technologies also had a similar breakout. So if it comes back down to 40, that's my retest. This is kind of an overhang here, but it's something different than you think. So yeah, I was in there's also an ASTS, all have the same pattern. This breakout I like a little bit more from that descending wedge. But I use call spreads for almost all of these because implied volatility on these names is getting insane. In fact, even if I look at the 134%, let's see what VOYG was at, 130%. So they're all pretty juiced up. I think Rocket Lab is about the same. They're all pretty juiced up, so I don't want to do that. I basically want to be playing the large dollar moves, meaning on the chart, this went from 80 to 143, which is quite good if your delta is high, right? So I like big moves like that, but I don't want big IV unless I'm selling puts on it, or selling calls, I suppose. But I just wanted to play the upside zone. So I did a lot of call spreads on those. And the trades worked out, but I closed them after such massive moves. Granted, it's not because IV is going to shrink. It was just because that was the trade. The trade was expansion. The expansion has happened for me, and this is a sizable move, and I wanted to capitalize and lock in my profits on those. So that's important for me, specifically on speculative catalyst-based trades. There was a catalyst. And that catalyst was everybody getting amped up about the SpaceX IPO. That was the thesis, and it's played out. So if I get a big move I was looking for, I cut it. So right now I'm completely out of Rocket Lab. I'm completely out of Voyager, although you see I have a small order there. A little probe, if you will, if you like that space lingo. And then ASTS I'm out of as well. So I might be interested in shares on pullbacks. And you can see, like I said, I had some alerts. ASTS, I don't think I want to do the alert, but Voyager, I am actually looking to get back in. And we didn't talk about, well, actually we did. I actually have an order sitting here after the breakout because this is a specific type of pattern that I like. It's called a Wyckoff accumulation, but I can see all of the stages here. I can see the actual phase A, phase B, C, and D, and we had that sign of strength here. So if we come back in, that's a retest that I really like. So that fits the bill. So let's look at each of these names since that's what everybody wanted. So ASTS, starting with ASTS, fundamentally, this is probably the biggest upside story in the group, fundamentally, right? So ASTS is trying to build satellite to phone connectivity. If that works, I could see it be a massive platform, but it's also one of the most execution sensitive names. So when I see huge moves like this, that is not necessarily all about execution. It could be people catching up to the name, and they did land a lot of contracts, I suppose. But technically, after a huge run, it's a name where I care less about the story and more about where buyers show up on pullbacks. So something like this, if we come down and people start buying the dips, that's going to mean a lot more to me than just these rips here. See, you do actually have a pullback down there, and yeah, buyers came back in, so that's not a terrible situation for me. And it was right at my pivot points and my resistance that's now turning into support. But I want to see that actually defended. This could just be a temporary little bounce, so I need to see the trend continue for a name like this, as opposed to just going in on speculation. Although this would be another call spread for me, probably, if I wanted to get in just low capital, because I could see it coming back down into this zone here, maybe actually at 80.05, overshoot it, if you will. But I don't want to see that. So, the whole story depends on satellite deployment, launch time, network performance, carriers, carrier partnerships, and commercial rollouts. So my view in general, it's a great upside story, but not a name I want to chase after this move. I'd rather be watching for a real pullback or a cleaner setup. So, this is a breakout retest for sure. But I'm not seeing the risk to reward here. I mean, this is like the range here, this is 200% almost, or actually it's more than that. And so to play that on a retest, it's getting a little hot and heavy. I think there's better ideas for me here. So that's my assessment on ASTS, but if you were to play that size small, tight stop loss, might be a series of these plays like a Qualmagi situation where you enter tight stop losses if you get stopped out, and then it presents itself again, you get back in, and just tons of paper cuts until you ride it to the top. I just don't know where the top is on this one for me. Like I said, it's an execution story now, so I like that less than a true technical trade that I can already fundamentally justify. So Rocket Lab, this had quite a run, and it was the cleanest public SpaceX sympathy trade. It has, real launch capability, real space system revenue, contracts, backlog, and clearer operating business than a lot of the smaller space names. But that does not make it cheap, and it doesn't mean it can't pull back hard. But fundamentally, Rocket Lab is a much more of a real company than a pure stock story, like a story, So I am watching whether it holds on pullbacks instead of immediately giving back the whole SpaceX sympathy move. But I'm not keen to totally chase it. This has had a lot of publicity, a lot of press, and I think that's because you had this accumulation zone right here, or reaccumulation, if you will, and then it broke out. So this might be the last phase of institutional holdings driving the price up and capitalizing as everybody in the retail space gets the mania. So that's not something I'm willing to chase. I would have had to want to get back in here, which, like I said, I did. And if it comes back down into there, I'll probably start selling some cash secured puts for the lower end of the range as a safety trade. So, yeah, technically, I'm watching whether it holds on those pullbacks. Sentiment-wise, this is a name that institutions and serious retail traders are most likely to point to when they say, I want public space infrastructure exposure. So that's also more crowded to me. So it's probably the best quality name in the group, but it's very exposed to the SpaceX IPO hype cooling off. So I like it more on pullbacks rather than on these vertical moves. Like I'm not momentum trading that on like small pullbacks. I need to actually see true levels come back and be tested. For me. So Voyager, this was actually one of my more profitable. You can see there weren't a lot of pullbacks, so I was just scaling out the whole time. And this had this tight coiling here for like 4 months, something like that. It was a little bit of a harder one to know, but this had like, I think it followed ASTS earnings, or maybe it was the other way around, or Rocket Lab's earning. It was basically, so Rocket Lab was on the 7th, right? Was that true here? Yeah, the 7th or the 8th. And VOYG earnings was before that, so it wasn't that. I can't quite recall. Maybe it was one of the earlier ones, to be honest with you. Anyway, it held up great on these earnings. You could see volatility was just getting compressed, pushing everybody's options lower and lower, eating up their premium, theta killing them. And then it popped upward. And I think this was actually a sympathy on someone else's earnings. But this seemed like a good risk reward at the moment because the floor had been held for like months. So that's why I really like that name. But let's talk about it, how it looks now. So same thing, this ran a lot. I'm a little less keen on it at the moment, which is why I'm out of it. And so if you're not familiar with this, it's more of a defense, government, and space infrastructure angle. It's not as meme driven as SPCE or MNTS, which we didn't get to yet. And it's not as clean of a SpaceX proxy as Rocket Lab, but that can actually make it interesting to me. So if the space trade broadens beyond the obvious names, Voyager could benefit from investors looking for less obvious infrastructure exposure. So technically, I would treat it like a pullback watchlist name, and the pullback here, like here's technically it has a lot above its actual breakout, but I guess you could see this as the true breakout. And on these super trend lines that I have here, sometimes they like to really come down and test the low range of the trend. So this might be a good place to set an alert. Let's actually go ahead and do that, and let's set it at 37.5. And if it's at or below that, I'm going to get an alert there. That's an interesting point for me to come in. It could fall lower, and funny enough, by that time it falls unless it just crashes right down, which it could. That's probably going to catch up with one of the moving averages, if not a few of them by that point. So that's looking good to me. Plus we're over bought right now, which doesn't mean it can't keep going. But yeah, that's kind of the read on this. It's a good looking one. I'm not opposed to that. And I also think it has a longer tail than like Rocket Lab. So then for one of the more speculative names, which is MNTS. So it's a high risk name in the group for me, for sure. But it did have a pretty sweet breakout. And these breakouts, this is the 200 moving average right here on the daily. When you gap above like that, to me, those are some of the most bullish signals I can find. So I love that. But, in fact, it was a trade. You can see I have this order here for 100 shares. I couldn't get filled. I identified it right around here. And it was overnight. This is a hard to borrow name, so it's very hard to get in overnight, and they don't have extended hours on Thinkorswim. So I couldn't get in, and then I wasn't willing to chase it. So I have an order down here, which is on some of these pivot points. So if we come back in and start to test this gap, I'm willing to pick up some shares there. But let's talk about what it is. So it's going to trade in short bursts, but fundamentally I put it in a different category than Rocket Lab or ASTS or Voyager. It's much more of a speculative retail vehicle. And sentiment wise, this is where traders go when they want like a low float, high volatility space lotto ticket. So I understand why traders watch it, but for my own process, this is a name I would use for serious. I would not use. Let me clarify that, for a serious space exposure. It's the momentum trading vehicle at the moment. It's like, okay if it's going to have good risk reward. And there was something like 10% institutional acquisition on it, or it was like 9.99% because of the way it works with owning that number of shares and not having some type of control. So there was serious institutional accumulation that I saw show up, not just like in and you can see here, man, this is such a Wyckoff situation here where you have this first recovery after the climactic dip. And that almost always happens. Then it comes back down, accumulates. You got the little spring right here, comes back up to test it, comes back into the range. And then there's your sign of strength. And we're off to the upside. So to me, that is a name that could run actually more just because of it. So I am willing to get in, but we're going to have to deal with this last accumulation phase that happened here that failed. So you may expect a reaccumulation phase before running. So this could be a really long trade to be in. So you got to have some deep pockets to hold that. So I'm only willing to get in lower. So to me, that's not the trade, so to speak. So then one of the last ones to look at is SPCE, the Virgin Galactic Holdings. So this is one where I actually have a trade idea. And so it's not the same business as RKLB or ASTS. This is space tourism. It's a highly speculative, very retail-driven fundamental, and the fundamentals depend on whether the company can actually execute into its Delta class revenue horizon. But technically, SPCE is interesting because it's been basing in what looks like a structural accumulation zone for like, man, I got to probably change. When I put this on the weekly, you're going to see how clear it is if you know anything about Wyckoff accumulation here. Now I need to change my scaling and then come in a little bit. And it's hard to even get this to look proper when they're this small. You can't go all the way to the edge, but we're getting there. Hold on. Let me do this just a little bit more. Okay, you should start to see the structure forming here. Now, this could be not the true breakout. We could come back in and then jump up. That's what I would kind of expect. So the way that I would be thinking about this technically is that I don't want to miss the full move in case this was actually it, because I do see a change of structure happening here. From this point, and again, this is on weekly, so somebody's watching this with really deep pockets. Every low is higher. We have an actual trend line forming there, which we did not have at any other time. I guess we did here, but it broke down at that point. But this coming along with the that's 100% a sign of strength for me. When I see that, now I can say that this actually happened in this post earnings. So we got some volatility out of there, except for obviously what's going on here. So the way I would do this is I'd have a starter position. So buy 50 shares. Let's go back to the daily here. It's probably what I'll be doing, but I may not get filled. So that's why I would start very small in case I actually just want it. I'm not sure I want it that bad, but if it pulls back at all, maybe around 4 or 5, I would probably get in. Then after that, I'd start selling cash secured puts around the $3. In fact, if we look at this, $3 puts are paying us $11 or $12. So that's actually a really good return on capital for a 6% chance of being assigned, or a 6 delta. And if I went out a little bit longer, I could get a bit more. And these still have tons of IV at 200 IV because of that move. So if I sell those now, sell maybe 10 cash secured puts. One costs me $300 if I get assigned. 10 of them is $3,000. That's not very much for this account. And getting $3, getting assigned at $3, if I can hold that and just run a wheel on it, for example, is not bad, but I don't think we're actually coming back down there. And if we do, like I said, I wouldn't mind owning those shares for absolute long-term situation, because if this doesn't actually pick up more with the SpaceX IPO, the fundamentals of this company, at least as they're reporting with their current business model, don't look to be profitable. Their EPS and their revenue aren't going to actually be positive for where I'd want to hold something like this until 2028. But at the same time, this is a story where holding it to 2028 at these levels is not the worst thing for me. So if you guys want to see me actually, build out that trade, build a trade ticket, let me know in the comments, because I will. I think I'm probably going to do that anyway. So just comment SPCE in the comments and I'll do that. So let's get back to the actual space here. So even though I'm out of individual Rocket Lab, Voyager, and ASTS trades, I still want some light exposure to the theme. So for that, I'm actually using an ETF. Okay, so I'm using an ETF NASA. And you can see here, I just have one call. It cost me $1,000, 1030 if you are an options trader. And I bought it 83 days out because it's after the IPO of SpaceX. You can notice I actually have some of the most open interest on this. It's 71 Delta, so it's basically trading like shares for the most part, even though IV is quite elevated for it. But let's talk about why I like this one. So I do a lot of GEX analysis, but even if you don't have access to the GEX, I don't want to go 48 days out because the theta is going to start killing you there. I think our theta is about half of that, right? Yeah, exactly. So I can be in this a little bit longer before it eats into my actual call. So, and this is a naked call. This is very unusual for me, but the GEX was so compelling on this as a target when I ran the numbers. In fact, you can see very low hedging on it. But this is one of those things, again, because IV is so high. If we get any little pop on this, even just back up to the point of control, which is now trading very high, and this is on the daily. This hasn't been around for very long. Let's go to something like the 4-hour. Yeah, we had a breakout over there. I think that's when I got in around. But I could see it dropping at some point to catch up with the 200 SMA on the 4-hour. I'll be okay with that. That's a small enough drop for 70 shares. If we drop $5, $350, I'm willing to ride that volatility. But this is something I'm monitoring closely because I do think it could. But this, to me, is where the breakout retest is happening, if it is indeed happening. I'm seeing orderly pullback here on the 4-hour, volume on the buys. I mean, look at that, it dipped below the breakout, and that's where we got all of the volume. So I'm liking this as a setup. And it's an ETF that, for example, like Rocket Lab, it doesn't really show it so well. Actually, here you go on the 15. Because things are getting bought up, but there have been some tanks here, and these have to do with Blue Origin crashing, probably some profit taking, hitting dealer clusters, that kind of thing, right? And that's why I don't like to chase these things if I don't have really tight stop losses. I'd rather be thinking a little bit broader personally. So that's why I'm trading NASA, because if these things continue to happen where we have volatility in the single names and I haven't chosen them correctly, I'd rather be in the basket, especially as we're approaching the IPO. So yeah, that's why I'm committed to NASA for a lighter basket exposure. And so let's do a final sentiment map, right? So Rocket Lab, it's the highest quality public SpaceX sympathy trade in my opinion, but it is getting up there for sure. But that doesn't mean it couldn't go higher. ASTS, I would say it's the biggest platform upside story, but it's also very execution sensitive. VOYG, it's acquired defense and infrastructure angle, so I still do like it, but it's run quite a bit. Let me get off the 4-hour. I think that's misleading, and something like this, when you're having a sector essentially waking up, these can go a lot harder than you think, but they can start to have volatility. And when the volatility starts to show up on the daily, I start to think about this a bit differently. And Voyager hasn't quite had it, although has Rocket Lab started to have the vol? I mean, we're starting to get gappy here, but I don't see the worst things. I do see some bearish divergence here. Look at there. Okay. RSI is going down on that, and we are going up at that same time period. In fact, actually, was it from here? This named, yeah, we're definitely going up here. It's going up 15% from the close of that day to the close of this day, which is always a nice way to think about that. So yeah, that to me says that we're probably going to have some type of pullback, but these divergences often they tend to happen or manifest. The result of them tends to manifest 1 or 2 days, if not a week later. Although I did identify this on the SPY. So here we have something similar. Okay, but this isn't a true peak. It hasn't come back down. And what day is that? Here we go. So let's look at the close of this day to the close of that day. And we have, you can't really see the, let's get rid of that. Let's remove that drawing and draw it again here. Okay, so that's only a 1% move. It's not as big, but either way, this is something I have been watching very clearly. So I don't love to see that. Actually, I'm hedged up. But anyway, let me get back to the space theme, only because we noticed that on, what were we on, ASTS? Or we were on Rocket Lab. I think we were on Rocket Lab. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, and so SPCE, it's a retail momentum and high IV options trade, but I do actually like this story, even though this is not something I generally chase. So again, going to be very particular. I can build out that trade ticket if you guys are interested in it. And when I say trade check ticket, if you're not familiar, I use Alpha Harmonic Trade OS. It's a platform for serious retail traders and quantitative investing teams to build out trade tickets. So all the things I'm talking about now, I don't just show up tomorrow and buy a bunch of shares. I actually map it all out. And then when the timing is correct, I'll execute and I'll have a very clear idea of what I'm actually trading, as opposed to just a, some type of scalping or swing trading, technical trade, candlestick charting only type of trading. So yeah, let me know if you want me to map that out. I've said it a few times in this video. Sorry for being redundant, just trying to cover a lot today. So MNTS, like I said, I liked this breakout, but if I don't get filled, it's not the end of the world for me. NASA, I'm in because I closed Voyager, ASTS, and Rocket Lab for a lot of profit. I wanted to still have some light exposure, capital efficient light exposure. So for me, the space theme is interesting, but it is crowded, and things can always get more crowded, but that's not where I tend to make my personal best trades. So I already took profits, and the cleaner catalyst trades, I'm going to be using call spreads as they pull back. And so now I'm watching for significant pullbacks in the higher quality names, holding lighter exposure through NASA and considering a very specific SPCE shares plus short puts structure. So that's the difference between chasing a hot theme and architecting a trade, So in closing, I guess to answer the viewer's question, yes, I'm interested in the space trade, but I'm not treating every space stock the same. I think that's a problem that a lot of people are having at the moment, is they're just like, who's trading the hottest? Where's the most volume? How much money could they make? These companies could make if SpaceX IPO does really well. I think those are the wrong questions to be asking. It's more like, who is technically in a position for me to benefit from the sentiment around their fundamentals. That's really the thesis, right, of how to trade these. So I'm watching for pullbacks, light exposure to NASA, and the specific trade idea is SPCE. And so if you want me to build that out, comment below. And also, if you like more breakdowns like this, these are a little bit off of the top of my head, so to speak. But if you want to see deeper breakdowns, just give me 1 or 2 tickers and I can show you the research I've done on them directly. Or if there's tickers you haven't seen, let me know. Or if you like this kind of baskets, I could do it. And let me know if you want me to tighten up the format, meaning would you like these shorter or longer? I listen to a lot of YouTube videos on double speed, which is why I'm trying to speak so quickly. So you don't have to do that, but you still get a lot of great information for the charts. So anyway, your comments are awesome. That's why I made this video. So thanks again, and check back tomorrow. We'll have a new video.